He was from where I'm from, however privileged you are growing up in Western Canada, and I grew up in a very comfortable small town in Western Canada, you always feel an outsider. And so there was that sense that, that Westerners were not quite equal and had to fight a little bit more for everything they could. And Mr. Diefenbaker let the outsiders in. That was a large part of what he did in shaping the Canadian political scene.
I have but one love, Canada.
He was a better fighter than he was a builder, John Diefenbaker was. And he would have been very effective, I think, in fighting the enemies of the threats to Canadian nationalism. I think he had a natural empathy for people, so it was that I think caused so many people who really did revere him to revere him. There were others too whose views were as strong about John Diefenbaker, but who disliked him intensely, and some of those were members of the Canadian establishment who thought that John Diefenbaker was a challenge to everything they represented. He undoubtedly ran into some prejudice in the rest of the country because he came from this strange place and was not accepted as easily as others might have been. And when he made mistakes, he's like all of us. He found he didn't think the fault was in himself. He thought that it was because people didn't like where he came from. He never really came to understand or to try to understand the particular community of Quebec, and I think that was one of the reasons his government failed. We stand on guard, we stand on guard. Part of what he did was take a party that people had written off and he made it a government, and that's certainly what I'm trying to do. So there is that parallel. My curve is steeper than his was. I'm a parliamentarian. He was a parliamentarian. That has to do with more than just being able to ask questions in the House of Commons. It has to do with a sense of belief in the institutions of the country. He was a more dynamic, charismatic character than I can ever claim to be. Part of what was exciting about him was precisely that charisma. Part of what brought him down was the sense that he invited conflict. I can handle conflict, but I prefer to try to resolve it. He was a critic of mine. I'd been against him at the end of the day. I'd been one of his strong supporters when I was a young conservative, but I had to as did a number of the members of my party, I had to urge him to resign when he didn't want to resign. He made us a much more democratic country. He made Canada belong to more of its citizens. He gave us a sense of pride in the country, in a sense that it was ours.